Right now, I have to stop saying.
You know, Kat is working the board when we hear that. Well, guess what? It's Friday, but that doesn't mean we're just going to mail it in, check out, still in the off season. We are getting into the near 20 team mark of the 31, other 31. And today is what I like to call the off season version of the Sean Shapiro Bowl, because we're going to talk about the team that he covers besides the Dallas Stars most closely, the Detroit Red Wings. Ryan Hana from the Wing Wheel podcast and Max Bultman, who covers the Red Wings for The Athletic, will be our guest today. Luds is here. Sean is here. I'm here. No Sam again. It's because we told him not to show up. Hi, Sam. Let's start it right now on DLLS.
Get ready, boys.
This is the DLS Stars podcast, Friday, August 22nd. Believe it or not, preseason game number 1 is less than 1 month away as we welcome in Craig Ludwig, Sean Shapiro. This is our Detroit Red Wings day. We'll bring on our guests, our first guest in just a moment. Sean, this is a big day for you. You cover both teams. You live in suburban Detroit, so you're at Little Caesars Arena a ton. You know both of these guests very well. Are you excited for the offseason Shapiro Bowl?
I'm very excited to have both these two gentlemen on. Ryan does a tremendous job with the Wing Wheel podcast. He and his whole crew over there. So if must listen for not just Red Wing stuff, they do a great job talking about everything. So very excited to have him on, and Max as well. And that's not just because he captains the beer league hockey team I play on Wednesday nights. So it's not just for that reason, but we are we're thrilled to have both these guys on. They both do great work, and it's going to be a fun show today.
Luds, you look like you're a character right out of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If people don't appreciate your costume wardrobe for what you are, I want to point it out. Look at that. He's wearing that. And this was a team that when you were a NHL professional was a big-time opponent for you. Basically, wherever you played, they were really, really good.
Yeah, see, now, if we were doing these shows when I was playing against these guys and they were kicking our ass all the time, I wouldn't be wearing this shirt. I'd be wearing something totally different. But right now, that's not been going so well for them. So I'm more than happy to wear their colors.
Well, I think that's the perfect note to bring on our first guest. It hasn't been going well. Please welcome from the Winged Wheel podcast, their host, Ryan Hana, joining the show. Ryan, I haven't met you before, but I hear great things from Sean, which immediately disqualifies everything. We both know this, but thrilled to have you on, and I think that's the way to start. This team, the Detroit Red Wings, was a dynasty for about a quarter century, and then Jim Nill left, and I was looking at it today because I know they made the playoffs after Jim came to Dallas, but they have not won a playoff series since Nill came to the Stars, and that was kind of a startling notice for all Red Wings fans. Is it starting to wear a little thin on fans in Detroit?
No, I have hardly even noticed. It's been going swimming over here for the last decade. Jeez. Wow, what an opening. Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I think, it's worn thin for people covering the team for quite some time. Bringing in Steve Yzerman really gave a big boost to the city. Big changing of the guard from, kind of the old way, so to speak, with Ken Holland. Trust me, fans in Detroit are fully aware of what Jim Nill has done since he left. That won't be a foreign concept. But the larger fan base is still, I think, in support and looking positively towards the direction this team is moving. But what I'm building towards here is, there's a growing contingent of folks whose patience is wearing thin, so to speak. You look at every offseason, and that gets louder and louder. I don't really speak in ultimatums too much, but this does feel like a year where a big portion of the fan base needs to see something. Otherwise, the scales may tip here.
Let me ask one follow-up before Luds jumps in. What is the perception of Detroit fans of Jim Nill as the Dallas Stars GM?
Yeah, it's overwhelmingly positive, I'd say. Like, it's hard to look at one of the guys who was considered the architects of one of the most successful eras in NHL history, really. And to see him walk the same way the Red Wings fans watched Steve Yzerman walk when Ken Holland was still there, and then go and do what he did in Dallas, like, he's pretty well regarded. I think there's a lot missed with Jim Nill. That said, like, still hasn't climbed the highest step, and so I don't think there's like an ultimate, oh, this is why Detroit sucks now. But you'd be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't hold Jim Nill in the highest regard.
Okay, Ryan. So then let's talk about the perception of Stevie in Detroit. Again, as I said in the beginning, as a player, the competitiveness in him, and you could see when things weren't going well as far as the game goes, you could see him step up another notch. It's just what he did. Does he have a short leash? Or are they going to give him some rope here, not to hang himself, but, to kind of move down the road, and things changing, I guess?
From ownership, whether fans agree or not, I staunchly believe Steve Yzerman has as much runway as Steve Yzerman wants. I think when he goes, it'll be on his own terms. I think he provides cover for ownership as they navigate, the baseball side of things with the Tigers as well. I think, this isn't, not that the ownership is hated, but this isn't Chris Ilitch's father and like his parents, who are really well regarded and loved by the fan base. Like, he takes some heat. And so having Steve Yzerman at the forefront gives cover. And that's just my guess there. In terms of the fan base, I think Yzerman's having some questions asked of him now from the fan base in terms of why hasn't this changed yet. And it's a really complicated thing. Like, the boring answer is it lives in the gray area. It's nuanced. I don't think Yzerman's been perfect, but if once you boil it down to the decisions that matter and the strokes of luck that matter, you can point to a lot of things that he's done as well as he could have, given the cards that he was dealt. And at the end of the day, I think when you look at the biggest needle-moving decisions, he's done reasonably well, or as well as one could hope with the situation he walked into. It's just, in the NHL, if you don't get lucky, it's hard to make those big leaps and bounds. He's not perfect. There's a lot going, in the other side of the ledger there. But all that to say, the fans want to see the playoffs. They don't really care about nuance at the end of the day. They want to see a Red Wings playoff game at the LCA. And so I can boil it down all I want, and I'm still among the crowd who's frustrated that I haven't seen a Red Wings playoff game at the LCA. So it's complicated.
Ryan, it's one of the things that I'm curious of your thoughts on this, because we've both been living in the one of the longest lasting kind of questions for the organization forever was, when was 91 was going to be retired? And obviously one person on this show actually got to play against Sergei Fedorov as a player. And so I'd be fascinated to hear Lud's thoughts on that as well. But when it comes to 91 getting retired, they're celebrating their 100th season. Is in your view, when you kind of look at this, do they have to make the playoffs? Do they have to cap the year 100 with the playoffs? Does all of this, or is this to make this all feel like it's not just a distraction from the ownership perspective?
There's two answers to this. The first one is like the objective. No, it doesn't matter. It's Hockey Town is written on the ice and the jerseys in the rafters. None of that affects the fact that Detroit's defense is like incredibly House of Cardsy. Like, you have Seider and Edvinsson, and then a bunch of hopes and prayers, really, not to detract from Johansson and others, but still. But the real answer is, like, yeah, those vibes matter. Like, the emotion of the moment matters. You talked about, Yzerman being remarkably competitive, and he's the same as a GM. Like, there's a reason. It's not just that he scares agents and players and other GMs. It's that he is so fiercely competitive. That's why he gets the respect, and to the media's discontent, the quiet and kind of the Fort Knox type thing with leaks that he gets. And he hates to lose. Yzerman absolutely knows the emotion of this moment. Yzerman absolutely knows this would be a great way to bring this team back into the playoffs with this kind of context and this kind of season. So even though it doesn't actually matter on paper or in terms of pucks and nets, it does matter. And so I do think that it is extra motivation for Yzerman and the team to get it done. Wanting it is different than doing it, and you actually are going to have to add something else to the team to support on defense at the very least. But yeah, I think it's in the mix there.
Hey, Luds, I want to jump in real quick. I know Ryan's our guest, but this is a Red Wings topic, and Sean brought this up. You've talked about how you've played and defended Sergei Fedorov on the show before, but Sean wasn't there, and of course Ryan wasn't. So if you would indulge us, what was it like playing against Fedorov, and did you have anything that you figured out against him during your career on the ice?
Yeah, I think that we kind of figured European, Russian players for sure are puck possession guys. They don't like to give the puck up. And, was I the opposite? I didn't even want that. I didn't want to touch it. But no, with Sergei, what for me, I knew where he wanted to go. I played my whole career looking at characteristics and tendencies of players. And so I kind of knew what areas of the ice they wanted to get to first. And everybody was different. But Fedorov wanted to get to the middle of the ice all the time. He wanted to get in there, make his plays, try to dance somebody if he could. So I gave him room. And because I knew, and the way that our team played, we always had a guy tracking back. So when I get across my blue line, I would give him more space on the outside. Then ultimately what he would do is when he didn't see anything where he'd get to the net, he would just curl up. He'd curl up top and look for late guys. And our coverage, the way our guys would come back, it made it tough on him. And as a matter of fact, one of those particular plays, you've heard me say this before, Rick Wilson, who was our D coach, and I love Will's, had him in college and everything else, and he knows me better than anybody. So I'm about center ice, and I hear Will to my left from the bench yelling, "Lud, stand up," and it's Fedorov. And Fedorov probably, it was a whole zone, still coming. I give him a lot of room. I looked over at him. I looked over at Wilson. I said, "Yeah, right." And then I got back and I backed up, and then Fedorov just kind of curled in what I just explained. And I went back to the bench and I said, "Wilson, did you really think I was going to stand up Sergei Fedorov?" He goes, "Nope, I don't even know what I was thinking there." So anyway, and again, I look at certain players, and there were some guys I knew that wanted to get to the wall, and I would give them the middle of the ice because then we'd have somebody step up from there. Anyway, but with Fedorov, just an ultimate puck possession guy, make all the plays, and yeah, everything with banners and rafters and everything else like that for me, hands down.
All right, Ryan. So we've talked about Steve's leash. The Yzerplan is going into year 7. What are some of the strengths? Because obviously the weaknesses are this team after 9 seasons hasn't been into a playoff. He's been around for 6 of them. This is going on his 7th. But what are things that you see positively, seeing as there's plenty of Detroit fans, I'm sure, that have let you know all the time about the negatives?
Yeah, they're drafting since he's come in is for the picks that matter. It's been pretty lights out, and it's had to be, right? Like, this rebuild could be way worse right now. But since he's come in, it's been Mo Seider, and granted, he came in, was it April 19th? And Seider was drafted not too long after. So credit to the team that did a lot of work leading up to that. And then Lucas Raymond, and then Edvinsson and Kosa, and then Casper, and then Danielson, Brandzak Nygaard, and Carter Bear obviously haven't made the league yet, and Kosa as well. But, with Lucas Raymond, you grabbed one of the best players in the draft at pick 4. With Mo Seider, you grabbed one of the best players in the draft at pick 6. Simon Edvinsson already is, I think, relative to the Red Wings, a top pair quality defenseman. Marco Casper had a huge coming out party last year. And those are the kinds of things that the Red Wings needed, to the point now where they have 2 really great defensemen on either side of the ice. They can't play together yet because they don't have other defensemen to be able to slot those. You have Dylan Larkin surrounded by other talented forwards. You have a core here that is really, really solid, if not great. And the other important thing here is that you look at the deals those guys are on who are already signed long-term. Larkin's deal is phenomenal. Seider's deal is phenomenal. Lucas Raymond's deal is phenomenal. And those weren't lucky. Like, those were grinds. And from the moment pen hit paper, we all said, like, look, this is going to seem like just cheering on anything Yzerman does. But considering the way the cap is going, these are already fantastic deals for value. And the cap went up even higher than we thought it did. So he has a lot of margin to play with now coming up with the salary cap. Those are the things that are overwhelmingly positive, where to the point where people are like, oh, let's tank for Gavin McKenna. I'm like, you can't. Your team is actually too good to tank for McKenna. You would need so many key injuries, and no, knock on wood, it doesn't happen. Like, this is actually a really, really strong core. Building around it is another story, and we'll see what he can do. I don't think they're quite there yet in terms of having all the pieces already in the system. But even if they whiff on a couple of the outstanding first-round picks who haven't made it yet, it's still a great resume.
All right, lots more with Ryan and Red Wings Day as we continue after the break here on DLLF.
Rugged Road is dedicated to creating innovative and durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best. Their products are designed with the highest quality materials and craftsmanship, ensuring they perform in the toughest conditions. Whether you're on land or water, Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. One of the most unique features is its ability to always float upright. The coolers are built to last, ensuring they can keep up with any adventure. The coolers are guaranteed to keep their contents cool for, here you go, up to 7 days. Who keeps their beer for 7 days? Perfect for a variety of outdoor activities, from fishing and tubing to camping and tailgating. The coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor or sports enthusiast. So gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road. Reliable, durable, and built to be used, Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head over to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use code DLLS for 10% off.
All right, thanks, Luds. Let's talk about Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Preseason football is, of course, well underway. It's almost over now. The NFL season is around the corner. College football is just about to start, but you can already make season-long, more or less picks for the 2025 season for both on Prize Picks. Enter your picks before week 1 kicks off for your season-long stuff. Now, of course, you can also set your lineups for daily Prize Picks or over the weekend. For example, Sean and I are big EPL fans, and the English Premier League is underway with week 2. That's right. I know your team won and looked pretty good, Kat. She likes Manchester City. Don't let me vomit. But anyway, you can make your more or less picks on individual.
Don't look at me like that, Sean.
He should. We have Tottenham, Liverpool, and City. Ugh. But anyway, you can make your picks on that. You can set your lineups anywhere from 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get them right, you can cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. It is a lot of fun. So download the Prize Pick app. Then you can use the code DLS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code DLS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's bring Ryan back on. Luds, it's your turn. Oh, Ryan's not there. He's there. There he is.
There he is.
Go ahead, Luds.
All right, we haven't even talked about the head coach yet. So McLellan comes in, gets what was it, 15 wins in the first 20 games, and then I think the wheels fell off a little bit, 11 in the last, whatever it was. What did you see in the beginning, and why did it just kind of fizzle towards the end?
Well, the beginning was kind of incredible because the team was pretty vocal, as much as hockey players will be in interviews towards the end of Derek Lalonde's tenure, saying that they really weren't happy with the system that was out there and they were looking for different kinds of structure. And Larkin was saying, forwards and defense were disconnected. Kopp and Kane were talking about, how they were handcuffing themselves offensively. McLellan came in and he was saying to the team in practice, just play effing hockey, like you know how to do it. But at this behind the scenes, he was giving them a lot more structure in a way that they needed. That experienced hand in the room really went a long way for that team. And it's like overnight, Andrew Kopp turned around. Overnight, Albert Johansson, Marco Kasper, and those two really made a huge impact on the team in terms of what they were then able to do. Kasper's season was taking off. Johansson became a steady second pair defenseman alongside Edvinsson. And yeah, you need a good amount of luck to rip off 2 7-game win streaks or whatever it was. But that's McLellan coming in. There's a new coach bump there. Absolutely. There's a honeymoon period, but it kind of unlocked a lot of what the team thought they could do. Patrick Kane really emerged. He seemed to thrive more under McLellan than Lalonde. So that structure, it's like he unlocked what the team was already capable of. That said, when it fizzled out, 2 main things come to mind. Dylan Larkin was obviously battling something from the Four Nations. He was hurt. He was playing hurt, as Dylan Larkin typically is by that time of year. Sorry to say, but he does often carry an injury like that, and he plays through it. Lucas Raymond as well, although he bounced back a bit sooner. The goaltending tandem, or trio or whatever, like they just never were going to last that long. And that was also the same time of year where they stopped stealing games for them. And it was just like a few lost periods against Columbus or Montreal or what have you. And they just got themselves into a funk, and the team's mental kind of let them down. I felt like the team's mental game really needed a lot of work, even more than what McLellan could bring in short notice.
Sean, let me ask all you guys this. Something you said, Ryan. You said when they weren't happy with the system that Leauge was running. So you have a Hall of Famer as the general manager, right? And you're surrounded by some really good, smart people. I'm always curious, why can't a guy like Steve Yzerman come down and talk to the coach and say, listen, this isn't working, tweak it? Why doesn't that ever happen?
My take on that is twofold on this, Lutz. I think you have some GMs who, and I think it's one of your coaches set the standard when he split it a bit, right? Was Bob Gainey was one of the reasons you guys won a cup in Dallas was because Bob realized he needed to fire himself as the coach and be the GM and hire Hitch. But I think part of it is there's a lot of the GMs now, I think they obviously have ways they want hockey played with their team, and it's how they build their team. But all of them love that safety. And this isn't a Steve thing. This is all of them. I think all of the GMs love that safety of saying, I build the roster, then I let my coach do their job. And I think that's something, too, that gives the GM a little bit of, whether it's right or wrong, I think that's something that is a prevailing hockey thing where the GM's like, I have my job. I'm not going to go step on the coach's tail. Whether that's right or wrong is two different things. But I think that's one of the reasons that might play out. The other thing, and it's just in the Detroit situation, I'll let Ryan kind of pick up after this, is there's also the spot where maybe with the timing of that change, Ryan, with what the schedule was and when we kind of knew they were what they were, and when Steve revealed they had been talking for about 2 weeks before, it feels the timing was a little bit calculated as well when it came to kind of helping the new coach bump there.
Yeah, that it was the St. Louis game just before the holidays, which was god awful. I was at that game and I thought, we don't like to just like attack people's jobs in the shows for no reason, right? And so we try to be pretty measured with what we're saying. And even after that one, I'm like, there's no ignoring that this team just isn't there. And with that holiday break and giving McLellan time to come in, or whoever the new coach would be, time to come in and practice, I think that was really important for them to just give them some kind of small trampoline, because it's hard in the modern NHL to find practice time. And the players now will tell you, like, we're looking forward to this offseason because we actually get a full offseason of Todd McLellan's systems. And so McLellan had like 1 or 2 practices off the hop.
We're talking about practice.
But yeah, I also think 2 weeks is a little bit generous as well. I think they were talking to coaches for a long time. That's how it goes in the NHL. If you even think that tomorrow you might have having a thought about firing a coach, you start to talk to other guys. I think it went back as far as last offseason, but I also think Yzerman didn't want to have to make a change because he understood that this team wasn't roster-wise in a place where they were going to be competitive as a playoff force. And so he wanted just not a minimum sufficient standard, but at least just for Leauge to be tracking. But the hand was kind of forced by the holidays. And I think, within a couple weeks before that, they knew they were going to move in that direction.
Ryan, one of the things you talked about, the confidence of this team, and I'm fascinated to see how this plays out this year. We've seen a common theme with the Wings the past couple of years has been their goaltenders carry them early in the year a bit. They get overplayed, they get old, and they break. That's been kind of a common theme, whether it's been not necessarily always old, but they break. And so they obviously bring in John Gibson this summer, and I'm fascinated personally to see how you talked about confidence and how this team plays. I'm fascinated to see what that does for the group in front of them. When you look at Gibson coming in, it's kind of a twofold question. What do you think is still there for John Gibson, and what do you think this does for the group in front of them now after what's been kind of a revolving door, even though we knew it was kind of who those revolving door was of three goalies each the past couple seasons?
I mean, it's a risky proposition to say this, but a lot is hinging on Gibson. I think you can expect a good amount from early season Talbot, like you said, but if Gibson can come in and be a very steady force where you're you can expect a guy who's posting like, a 9-10 average. That would change the dynamic of this team. That said, it's a bit of a rich thought, right? He's moving to a new system. He's moving to a new team. He's playing behind different defensemen. Anaheim didn't have a great structure to protect him and Dostal, mind you. And I think his numbers were great when he was playing there. So that inspires a lot of confidence. I think the talent is there with Gibson. I'm not saying this just to flatter you, Sean, but I don't think goalies lose their talent overnight. I think it's a very mental position, and it's a very situational position. And so he's not old. He's not, over the hill in terms of what his body can do, I don't think. And so it really just depends on if it's a fit. Now, the bad news is that the Red Wings aren't, a flawless defensive system or, defensive lineup, to say the least. So it would have to take some chemistry and some magic and a lot of improvement from the Red Wings as well. But if he can come in and just be like, bang an NHL average for what he's posting in save percentage, that'd go a long way. Just to know that your goalie isn't losing you any points each night. But if he doesn't, and let's say he's at like an 895, and there's so many people who are better at the advanced analytics who are cringing at the fact that I'm just using straight save percentage. But for the sake of simplicity, like if he's at like an 890, 895, I'm having a hard time seeing this team putting up a ton of points on the board early on because they didn't make a ton of improvements other than him in the offseason.
I want to ask all three of you, but I'll start with Luds here. If you, Luds, think about Todd McLellan's defensive systems, is that going to be, Ryan was just talking about not getting a lot of help in front of his Ducks teammates. And look, we saw John Gibson look great, but also kind of get worn out and kind of maybe even give up at times because he wasn't getting any help. And I don't know if you guys agree with me, but we'll ask Luds first on this. I think if you put John Gibson on a team like Vegas that layers the defense and makes it easier on goalies, he shines and he's fresh and he's not worn out halfway through a game or halfway through the season. Is that the case with Detroit? We'll start with Luds and then I'll ask Sean and Ryan the same thing. Do you think that just the chance of leading a team to a playoff, again, it's not a guarantee in Detroit this year?
Well, again, my thing is after Mo, what do they have back there for defense? So yeah, it was chaotic there. I think maybe McLellan ends up figuring out how I think as a coach, you have to see who you have, what kind of players you have, what's their capabilities. Dallas gets away, right? A lot of that man-on-man stuff that I complain about all the time, but on entries, they can take the pressure away because of their skating ability. It's when they would get some zone time is when they were playing what they did that gave them problems. So I think you have to know what your players can do. I'm a believer when you come in and a general manager asks you, hey, what kind of system do you play? My first question, I'm gonna answer his question with a question. I'm gonna be like, well, what players are you getting me? Because that depends on what kind of system I want to play. I want to be able to play 2-3 like Gully. Glenn Gullickson talked about he wanted to play 2-3 different ways, possibly in his own zone. Okay, well, if you can do that, if you have players that can adapt and adjust on the fly. So, but my first thought was when Gibson, because again, I think in Anaheim, obviously injuries happen, and maybe that's because of overplaying and having to move from one side of the net to the other. I just wonder if the same thing's going to happen. I mean, Ryan, what was their PK last year? Wasn't it right at the bottom of the league? And again, that's not an end-all, be-all, but it wasn't very good, was it?
Yeah, at one point it was tracking to be like the worst in modern league history, so it was pretty terrible.
That's pretty bad then. Yeah.
So, right. Sean, do you think that this could be an improvement for Gibson in front of Gibson for him, not for the Red Wings? Because obviously, I think John Gibson, if he's healthy, is a step up from the. I know you were fond of Alex Lyon. I don't know if Peter Mrazek. I mean, he had his day, but I think Gibson's the better goalie. The question is, can the system in front of him, the team in front of him, help? Because the Ducks are trending up. We thought the Red Wings were trending up during Derek Lalonde's last full season, 23-24, and then things went off the rails a bit last year.
Well, to be fair, real quick, I'm fond of Alex Lyon. I love talking to Alex Lyon after practice every day. There's a difference between I'm able to isolate between successful where we are success-wise in the NHL and whether they're the person I enjoy speaking to. Those can be two different things. So, Ryan's talked about the defense. Like, you look at this team, and to me, like, I'm a big Simon Edvinsson believer. Like, I think Edvinsson is one of those guys who, I think in Detroit, he's already taken the jump in stature of how people should look at him. But I think league-wide, Edvinsson becomes a name that becomes much more of a household name as Detroit has a little bit more success, and he doesn't have to. The problem is the third pair is probably going to be on opening day. It's probably going to be Bernard Docker and Eric Gustafsson.
Don't you love when Sean's
Right?
Wi-Fi
Like,
is the best
This
connection?
is the thing, Sherrod. Oh, yes. We love that. And when you still have Ben Sherrod is probably going to be on their top pair, quote unquote, on paper based off how things go this year. So I think from a Gibson, from a human and a goalie perspective, I think there's going to be a nice new leash on life, new opportunity. He's spoken about that already. But I don't really, when it comes to the defense, I think a lot of it is going to be, he's going to have some first 10, 15 game challenges to help Todd McLellan make sure this group is able to come together so his life can be easier from game 20 on. That's how I look at it. It's an interesting kind of dynamic because we should let Ryan go deeper on that because he's the guest here.
Unfortunately for Ryan, we're almost out of time and we could do a whole hour with you, but we do have to get to Max. So Ryan, last question for you before we have to switch over to our second guest. We've asked everybody on the other 31 their honest outside of the Dallas Stars orbit opinion. So what do you think of the Stars going into the 25-26 season?
It's hard to bet against this team. I think anytime you add a player like Mikko Rantanen, I understand the way there's some really high highs and it kind of tapered off, but I'm not going to bet against Mikko Rantanen and Miro Heiskanen. They should, by all rights, be a force. They have all the makings to be a team that can come in and do the job out of the West. I think, the coaching situation is going to be interesting to see it play out and how he takes hold. And I think with a team with this much talent, a new coach or different approach to things could really, really launch them. That said, they're not without challengers, so it's kind of the same as last year for me. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make it. I don't know that they're my first pick, but they'd be up there for sure. And just to note here, Max, every good idea Max Bultman has is from me, and all the bad ones are his own. So just wanted to put that out there.
I love it. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. Really enjoyed your time. Like I said, it went by too fast and we could have you on for twice as long. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, there's Ryan Hana.
Thanks,
he
Ryan.
is the host of the Winged Wheel podcast. And up next, we'll talk to Max Bultman from The Athletic, who covers Detroit on DLLS. Okay, but it's my turn because I'm going to talk about a couple events coming up for DLLS that you should be aware of, especially if you're a diehard. If you haven't signed up to be a diehard yet, you should, because there's a litany of benefits. One of them is they are doing a DLS Cowboys trip to Las Vegas presented by True Fan Travel. Yeah, I was just waiting for the QR code to show up, and it was perfect. November 15th through the 18th, you can see that. They are going to play the Las Vegas Raiders. Ardell, I'm not going to do the Raiders every single time, but it is fun. But talk about this. Self-travel package trips are available. You do not have to be coming from the DFW area. You can be from anywhere. You can meet up with the DLS Cowboys crew. Mandalay Bay Hotel, Resort, Casino is where they are going to be staying. They have a itinerary that includes things like a free day to check out Vegas, a pep rally, all-inclusive Dallas Takeover tailgate, and game day. We're not sure what all-inclusive actually means, so let's leave it a little open-ended. And then, of course, the game itself and heading back to Dallas or wherever you originated from. So that's a lot of fun. Nightlife in Vegas, the game with the Cowboys and Raiders. Who knows where those teams will be in mid-November. But there's actually another event coming up in less than not even a week. Monday, this coming Monday, the 25th, live from the DLLS studio, this very building that we're in right now. You can, if you're a diehard, you can buy tickets for the DLLS Mavericks diehard film session and Q&A at our studios. Bobby Corrala and the DLS crew will be doing an interactive film session and answering questions from 7 to 9 on Monday night. Food and drinks are included. There are other things where additional proceeds can be benefit and donate the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. There are still tickets available. You have to be a diehard. So sign up today. Go to our website, alldls.com. Sign up and then get those tickets for Monday's Q&A. All right, let's bring in the other guest on our slate today, which is the guy who Sean speaks highly of from a beer league perspective, but he's also the beat writer for the Red Wings at the Athletic. He is Max Bultman. Hi, Max. How you doing today?
I'm good, but if Sean's speaking highly of my beer league, it's he's just doing me a solid there. I'm a fourth line center on a 2.5 line team, so
perfect. You fit right in. All right, so let's talk about the Wings. We had Ryan on, and Ryan took all the credit for every idea you've ever had about the Red Wings. I'm sure you heard.
All right.
And
yep,
I want to. We'll get back into the stuff, some of the topics perhaps that we had with Ryan, but I want to ask about off-season moves besides John Gibson. We can get into Gibson in a minute because the most recent one is an interesting scratch of the head. August 15th, Travis Hamonic signs a 1-year, $1 million deal as a 35-year-old. And I'm curious, as Sean and Ryan were both talking about some flimsy depth on the blue line besides, Seider and Edvinsson, where is the blue line for the Red Wings at that you need a 35-year-old Travis Hamonic as a bolstering depth piece?
Well, I just don't think it's as key a piece as, people might make it out to be, right? I mean, it's a 1-year, $1 million deal, right? I don't even, Travis Hamonic may play. He played 60 games last year for the Ottawa Senators. Maybe he plays something like that for the Red Wings. But if he plays 40, I'm not going to be surprised, right? I mean, he's just one more guy in that mix. I think the key is, I don't think you're asking him to play a top 4 role here. And if he does, the Red Wings, I think they're going to be in a little bit of trouble with that, because I don't think what you saw last year in Ottawa gives you any hope that that's, realistically still in the cards for him. Certainly it was earlier in his career, but at this point, I don't think that's the realistic way to maximize him. I just think, you can add one more body on a cheap contract that you can bury the entirety of in the AHL if it doesn't work. I don't see any reason not to add players like this, because you can put them wherever you need to put them. And if you need them, you need them. And if you don't need them, great. So to me, the Hamonic signing was basically a non-story that caught a bunch of traction because it happened in August and we desperately need things to talk about, as you guys well know. But I guess we'll see. It could become a story, certainly, depending on how the season plays out for him and for the Red Wings.
Hey, Max, last segment, Ryan mentioned Dylan Larkin. And Dylan has played, I think it's 4 or 5 playoff games, and those were all in his rookie season, and he hasn't had a sniff since. Do you sense him, being the captain, leader of the team, do you sense any frustration with how things are going there from Larkin?
Well, you'd have to. I mean, you go look at the end of season press conference, right? And I think, or the end of season, and even, I think after the trade deadline, right? Like you go back and look at all these things, and this is a competitive player, right? I mean, the reason he's the Red Wings captain in part is because the motor, the engine was there at such an early age, the competitive fire. And even before he was maybe this like mature captainly like presence, he was the lead by example because he wanted it so bad, and it was all pedal to the metal. And so you think about when you match competitive fire like that to the lack of results the Red Wings have gotten. And I know my camera's getting fuzzy here. I don't know what's going on. I'm sorry about that. But it's obvious that I think that kind of situation is combustible and that it's going to be frustrating. So, I think there's frustration, but I also think, nobody's more motivated than Dylan Larkin to try and help the Red Wings dig out of this. Right. And there have been times in the last couple of seasons where he has willed the Red Wings to victories. There have also been times, this past season, I think he was playing hurt, but I don't think anyone was happy with Dylan Larkin's March last year. And so he's going to have to find a way to help power through those moments. So it's a big year for him. It's a big year for the team as it pertains to him. And he continues to be a central figure in where this team is at and where it's trying to go.
Hey, Max,
John, it's your turn.
That you and I have talked about off air quite a bit. I'm starting to talk. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was just a delay. Go ahead.
Max. Yeah, Max, it's a topic you and I have talked about, obviously off air before, but it's a fascinating thing to see how things have, and I'm tying to this Dylan, because Dylan was just invited to Team USA's Olympic orientation camp, the other Wings player obviously being Patrick Kane. It's been, when you kind of look at Patrick Kane and from the in-season signing to now getting a full year with Todd McLellan coming in, where do you kind of look at where we should, for expectation-wise, what should and shouldn't be expected of Patrick Kane as he continues to go right now, as he goes into his age 36 season here?
Yeah, I think the things you can continue to expect from him are what he's shown you in these last 2 years, that he will be a huge piece of one of the best power plays in the league, that he continues to think the game and see the ice as well as just about any NHL player ever, and certainly currently, right? There are a few people that make the kind of plays that Patrick Kane makes. And also the feel for the moment. If you go look, I mean, Patrick Kane joined the Red Wings mid-season in 2023-24. Even though he missed that time, and even though he's missed some time with injuries, nobody's scoring more big moment, game-winning goals than Patrick Kane is for the Red Wings, because that is who he is. He's got ice in his veins. He's got a feel for the moment. I think he actually likes those pressure moments. That all is reasonable to expect from him. You're not going to expect for him to lead your team in scoring. You're not going to expect for him to go do a whole lot of anything in the corners. That's just not where he's at in his career. He's had the injuries he's had. And I think there's something to be said for kind of the non-negotiables that you hear a lot of coaches talk about, right? That everyone has to do everything. But when you are Patrick Kane, and when you are at this phase of your career, he's probably one of the very few guys that you're going to forgive for shying away a little bit from one of those down low board battles. You can't have a whole team of guys who do that. You can't let that spread. But I think it's fair to say it, as you're alluding, Sean, you're not going to expect that of Patrick Kane right now.
So as we continue this sort of like adding to or patching the roster, you've got the addition of Van Riemsdyk. Bernard Docker is an interesting one, although I'm not sure where that actually lays out with the group. Mason Appleton is another one we saw a lot in the West with Winnipeg. And, you know, none of those guys are bad players at all, but none of them sell season tickets either. And that's sort of the question of, are those just, in your mind, plugging around the edges, or is there something in what Yzerman has done this summer that you think can make a step? Because the reason why I ask is I'm looking at the Eastern Conference standings from the end of last season, and I don't know if top 9, Detroit finished 10th just behind Columbus. Realistically, somebody's going to maybe regress a little bit. But as I'm looking at this, the 9 in front of Detroit and the Rangers just behind them, I have a hard time seeing these teams not being at least competitive. Not necessarily Stanley Cup contenders, but playoff competitive. You know, if you look down at the Islanders, the Penguins, the Sabres, Bruins, Flyers, I'm not so worried about those ones. But how does Detroit take a step to get into that 8?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they had the summer they wanted to have, first of all, right? Like, you talk about the additions that they did make. I have a hard time believing that on their whiteboard on, you know, June 20th or whatever was those guys at the very top and nobody else, right? I think they got John Gibson, and I think getting a goalie was very important. But when you talk about the forwards, I'm sure they would have loved to add a top 6 forward. Certainly they needed to add a top 4 defenseman that they didn't get. And as a result, where it leaves them is banking on internal improvement. Now, we've seen that happen before. And some of the guys that they need internal improvement from have already shown us they're on that trajectory. I'm sure in those 30 minutes with Ryan, you guys talked plenty about Marco Kasper. If Marco Kasper just repeats what he did from January 10 on last year, that by itself is a huge deal, right? Then you're talking about a 30-goal, 55 to 60-point center. That's something the Red Wings have not had in quite some time. So if Marco Kasper proves that was not just a, you know, second half surge, part of this kind of bump they saw under McLellan, that's going to go a long way. Part of it is the defenseman, right? Simon Edvinsson, who I heard you guys talking about just before I came on. I'm fully with Sean. I think this is a year that the hockey world is going to see a lot more from Simon Edvinsson, who had a quietly outstanding first full season in the NHL last year that nobody talked about simply because he wasn't eligible for the Calder Trophy. Had he been, he's quite possibly a finalist for it. Maybe not quite because it was a really strong year with Hudson and Celebrini and Michkov, but I think he's top 5 with a bullet, right? And you're going to see him, I think, get a little more power play time this year. You saw that a little bit at the end of last year, although Gustafsson still be a factor there. It's just, to me, who plays with him. And for that reason, perhaps the most important young player to see a step from for the Red Wings might be Albert Johansson, who was good under McLellan, who earned a lot of trust from Trent Yawney, who runs the defense in Detroit. More than I think any of us thought, Sean. I mean, you can speak to that, right? Like, Johansson spent the most of the first half of the year as kind of a 6'7" swing guy. And then all of a sudden you see him playing second pair minutes under McLellan, and he makes a really standout defensive play against Connor McDavid that everyone in Detroit has seen the highlight of, because everyone was like, oh, whoa. Johansson's a player Johansson is a player that every time coaches talk about him, they talk about how he grows on you. And I think the more time you get around him, the more you kind of appreciate what he does. And certainly he's smart. He skates well, but he's so thin. And so I think if he can have put on any muscle, if he can be durable enough to withstand a 20-minute-a-night workload that the second pair tends to demand, that would be the biggest source of internal improvement. But I get what you're saying. I think as much as anything, the Red Wings have to hope that their path includes like Montreal regressing, right? I know they went out and got Noah Dobson, but so much went right for that team at the end of the year that it is possible they are not the same team that you saw from, January on. That's part of the Red Wings path too. But I don't think anyone could say confidently the Red Wings are a playoff team this year. They're part of a group of 5 or 6 teams that, as has been the case the last 2 years, are probably going to have to go right down to the wire.
And that's a really tough place to live in. The Stars used to be like that for a long time. We'll get into that a little bit more. Let's talk more about Red Wings with Max right after this on DLLS.
Before we do that, let's talk about being a diehard. A wonderful community of fanatical sports fans, you could say diehards almost, that are they're celebrating a year anniversary on that. I believe next Tuesday will be 1 year of DLLS. It's been a really fun experience doing all of this, and we've all made it this far, including Sammy. So you can become a part of the diehard community by scanning that QR code right there. We got a current sale going on for $48 for the first year. There's a new free newsletter that I think Bobby is the one who puts it all together. No matter who does it, they do a great job. It comes in my email inbox every day, and it's great. And then we also, obviously, when you become a diehard, you get the shirt, and that's one of the big selling points here. We got several options that are going to pop up on the screen in front of me. The amalgamation of mascots, just to say to rub it in Sam's face. The Nolan Ryan Robin shirt, the Big Tech shirt. We've got a lot of great options. Any of those can be yours, or any other of the All City shirts, like the Finnish Mafia shirt, could be yours when you sign up. And then I believe that as you get discounts on we have lots of other things for diehards as the season goes along too, like the film room with the Mavericks folks on Monday. And maybe we'll do something Stars related someday on that too. Who knows? Stay tuned and become a diehard. Who can say?
All right, scan that QR code and, of course, be a diehard. All right, let's bring Max back on. And Luds, you're up as we continue to make everybody in Detroit feel wonderful about their hockey team.
It's funny. It took us to the third segment to mention Patrick Kane. So
I know.
I'm like, well, there are a couple guys. I mean, there's a couple guys that we haven't talked much about, and DeBrincat's one of them. Max, the other guy though is Lucas Raymond. Like, what's his ceiling? Where do you expect this kid to go?
It's huge, and I think there were long stretches of last season. I think through the All-Star break, he was on a 90-point pace last year, and there is more in him yet. Like, to me, it's entirely possible that this guy can score 40 goals and have 90 points. Like, he's that good. He can do it all. Now, part of the obstacle to, I guess, scoring 40 goals is the power play is so well distributed that he may never pile up the giant numbers there that some of the other guys who do that is. But certainly, I think you're expecting this guy to be a perennial 30-goal point per game kind of player at this point. He can take over a game. And I think if the Red Wings get the right guy up on the top line with him and Dylan Larkin, he could take another big step this year and really elevate himself into being one of the top 10 wingers in the NHL. That's very much on the table for him.
Who do you think that guy is, though? Because on Puckpedia, you can go through their roster and they'll do like a depth chart. They've got JVR in that spot. And I understand that he's still got something around the net, but he's at 36. I just don't know if he's the first guy you think of playing with Larkin and Raymond like that.
Well, none of the options are the first guy you'd think of, right?
Yeah.
And that's their problem. And I don't know if that's something they can solve with a trade or if it's going to be by committee or if they're just going to have to experiment a bunch and try to find a guy that works. To me, I think the name that as the summer has gone on, I feel more and more like, obviously Marco Kasper looked really good with those guys. And if they figure that Andrew Kopp can play second line center with DeBrincat and Kane, which he looked really good doing under McLellan until he got hurt the first game after the All-Star break, you could go back to Marco Kasper in the top line left wing. But I think the flip side of that is if you want Kasper, who is your 2C of the future and is certainly you envision down the middle, you could put Kopp with Larkin and Raymond. And I think that might work out a little better than JVR because Kopp has the playmaking. He has the heavy. maybe he's not that like net front wizard goal scorer that JVR is, but I don't know that you need a goal scorer with those two. Those two can score plenty of goals. I think what you need is someone who's going to win in the heavy areas, who can think the game at their level. I think that applies to James Van Riemsdyk, but I also think it applies to Andrew Kopp, who's a bit younger and who I think maybe a little more capable of holding up in the like 18-minute a night kind of workload that's going to take it at even strength.
One of the things too, Max, with this team, like, and with Casper, you kind of hit on the point I was going to ask about, because he's a guy, right, where there's, and Todd talked about it quite a bit last year. At some point, he's got to take the step to run his own line, right? Like that's the thing with Marco. When you take a kind of look at this team and you look at some of the other bottom six guys that are, when you throw them together, it could be a couple different ways, right? Rasmussen obviously comes back and is coming off a better year. Elmer Soderblom, we've seen some growth there, but it's not physical growth. Obviously, he's 6'8", but as far as growth in his game, and then the ongoing Jonathan Berggren saga, where you and I have heard for years and a half now that Jonathan Berggren is allegedly going to be the next guy that gets traded. Is there anyone, when you look at the bottom half of that group, where this is a candidate for, hey, somebody is going to surprise me and provide that internal boost that maybe I didn't know was going to come? Is there any candidate from that bottom group for you?
Carter Mazur, I think, what would be the answer to that. And it could be Soderblom, right? Like, I think Soderblom has shown in flashes that he can be really productive, and he's been better in the NHL than he has in the AHL. Once he started to unlock that physicality that he showed to get himself called back up to the NHL, that started to be a realistic option. But Mazur is the guy that I come back to, because this is a guy who can score from range because he has a really good shot. But I think what's important about him is he can score greasy. He can get to the middle. He'll go around the net. He's fearless. He's gotten injured, and that's my only question with him is, can he stay healthy to play 60-plus games in the NHL this season? But he's proven it at every level, at Denver, in the AHL, that this is a guy who elevates in hard games. He was excellent in the playoffs for Grand Rapids in 2024. That's a guy who I think can give you 15 goals in the bottom six this season if he can just be healthy. So he is a player that I'm watching in a big way. You could even talk about Nate Danielson. I don't know how much time you would see him in the bottom six if he gets called up. I think you would ideally want him playing with, a Patrick Kane, with a Dylan Larkin if you can, just to kind of give him that guy he can play off of, play with, who can think the game, who can, be that veteran for him. But so Danielson's a guy I can see contributing, but when you talk about the bottom six specifically, it's Mazur.
I had one person in the chat ask about a couple of prospects, so I thought I'd give them a chance to let you answer to that, Max. So Drew said that Ryan didn't mention ASP, that's Axel Sandin Pellikka, who's only 20. And speaking of young guys, is Trey Augustine. We haven't really talked about Sebastian Cossa either, because it feels like this is a Gibson Talbot year, and that Cosa's not really here and now guy, but a future guy, as is Augustine. But what are your thoughts? I mean, is there any, whether it's Sandin Pellikka or Augustine or Cossa or anybody else I haven't mentioned, that has a shot at being part of this group this year?
Not Augustine. He's back at Michigan State, and I think if he turns pro, like, you're not going to see the Detroit Red Wings send a guy right from college to the NHL at that position, right? Like, you very rarely see that. And Augustine, as good of a prospect as he is, he's a 6'1" goalie who I think you're going to want to get time, get pro time in the AHL before you're sending him to Detroit. I don't envision Sandin Pellikka getting maybe a game or two at the end of the year, but not much more than that. What I saw in the AHL at the end of the year was a guy who needed the time to transition, and he was excellent in Sweden. Don't take this as me saying he was anything short of that. He was the best defenseman at the World Juniors, as voted on by the directorate 2 years in a row. Like, he's done everything he could to this point. It's just, we got to look at him in Grand Rapids, and he looked like a guy who needed some time to adjust to that league. And I don't think it's going to be a month of time. I think it's going to be a season of time. And it could even be more than that. They left Simon Edvinsson in that league for more than a season. Cossa, I think you're going to see this year. I don't think you're going to see him for 30 games, but could I see him being up for 7, 8, 10, maybe as many as 12 games? That would not shock me. When you talk about a Gibson-Talbot tandem, I think you're spot on. But those guys are not young. And one of them is going to miss some time. And when that happens, I have to think that that's Sebastian Cossa's opportunity to come up and get a taste and get a nice dosage. That would not be dissimilar from what it was with Yaroslav Askarov this past season in San Jose, right? He comes up and he gets, I think it was 12 or 13 games this season in the NHL. That would be about right to get him ready for like full-time NHL, tandem load the following season. Part of it's on him. He did not have a good finish to the season last year, and he's got to be excellent this preseason and early in the season to show the Red Wings he's ready if that moment comes. But I do think you'll see more games from Kosa than either of those other two.
Max, the Lions got a pretty good football team. The Tigers are playing well. So you work for the Red Wings in Europe. You're selling season tickets. How are you going to sell me? What are you going to tell me that you want me to buy season tickets for the Wings this year?
Well, did you hear about the Fedorov jersey retirement by chance?
That's all you got?
No. Look, what I would say is I am a diehard Detroit Lions fan, right? And the thing that has made the last 2 or 3 years so special watching the Lions is that you saw it on the way up. You saw the time that they struggled with a lot of these same players, and you knew what was coming, and you saw the progress. I don't think any Lions stretch of Lions season has been as fun as the last month of that 2022 season when they came up just short, because you saw the progress, and all of a sudden you felt in a hurry where it was going. I'm a big believer. Same thing about the Tigers last year, right? Like you watched that team from mid-August on, and it was like once it hit, you felt like you were on the ground floor and saw it all come at once. I think if you're the Red Wings, you got to be selling that kind of vibe to fans, right? It's like, look, it's going to happen at some point. You're going to want to be here when it is. I think that's the message that you're sending is these guys are starting to arrive. You saw the Casper breakout. You saw Edvinsson burst onto the scene. Don't you want to be there when Danielson gets up? Don't you want to be there when Kosa gets up? As all these guys, Axel Sandin, Pellikka, come into the fold, that's probably has to be your pitch. And I know in a centennial season, I joke about the history. There's some built in. You're going to get fans in the building who want to be there and who want to relive the history. But from a present day standpoint, you are very much selling these exciting young players that are finally starting to arrive. And there's some truth to it. My question is, are Red Wings fans, after 9 years of a rebuild, in the mood to hear that? Because it's more true this year than it was 5 years ago. But 5 years ago, you had people who were actually willing to hear it because it hadn't been 9 years outside the playoffs and 9 years of selling hope. So I think it's a hard job right now for the first time in our lifetimes, Sean, for the Detroit Red Wings to market that, right? Forever they had the playoff streak, 25 years of that. Now it's a 9-year playoff drought, and you've probably used up your, hey, the future is coming messaging in the first 6 or 7 years. So it's this tough balance where the future is arriving now, but everyone is all about the present because they've seen this team miss the playoffs enough times. That's the expectation. Make no mistake. They put Hockey Town back on the ice. There, all that stuff is great. They want to see playoff hockey here.
I have one more suggestion about that, Max, because everybody that we've asked, and it hasn't been every guest, but a couple sprinkle them here and there. It started with Molly Walker with the New York Post, and Kat was actually producing that day, and then she corroborated her own travel. She knows exactly where we're going with this. God. Everybody says that the LCA press food is the best in the NHL.
It is the best.
Does that carry over to the concessions, or is that only for the media?
Oh, it carries over. I mean, look, part of the appeal for the media is that every game we get a carving station, right? They've got
that's exactly what I said. When I went, I went with the Mavs, and when I went, and I was like, oh my God, you guys have a carving station with what? It's incredible. It's incredible.
Well, and if you there's your Mavs, ticket sales right there. Free.
Oh yeah, it was
if you
free.
Went with the Mavs, yeah,
it was free
NBA,
$99,
it's free.
baby.
NHL.
Yeah,
that's right. Not free to us in the NHL side, but the concessions are very good. I'll tell you my sneaky concession tip. If you're going to a game at LCA this year, there is a little, if you walk in the Meyer entrance, to your right will be the team store, and to your left, there's a little nook carved out that has just this outstanding burrito, nacho, taco stand. And I'm forgetting the name of it right now. I feel terrible that I've forgotten it, but it's only because it's been 4 months since I got to have it. On days where I walk in and I'm not feeling the press meal, I've had too much free Little Caesars, too many chicken tenders, too much carving station, I will go up and get a burrito or nachos from this place. And it is outstanding. I will remember the name at some point, but it's just blanking on me on the spot here. But that's where it is. It's right inside the Meyer entrance. To your left, there's this little tucked away nook, and it's really good. Sean's seen me eat them because I think whenever I plop them down on a table, everyone goes, "Oh, where'd you get those from?" That's
if you're already paying, you might
as well have some variety. Yeah, for sure.
You want to go.
All right, Sean, go ahead.
Wait.
Oh,
good soups too, by the way. Good.
Yep. Hold on one second, Sean.
Yeah.
We have to ask Max at least one more thing. Sean's going to ask him, but we have to do overtime first. So to all of our television viewers, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure to like and subscribe and check out alldls.com.
Oh my gosh, you nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well
ahead,
done,
Sean.
Owen. Well done. The soup is awesome. LCA also has really good soup options. Max
The
and I
chili,
had
the turkey chili.
Yes, the turkey.
I'm getting
chili
hungry
is,
just listening to this.
Yes, good soup options. Max, we with every guest we've had on during this All 31, we've done been doing our own collecting of opinions on the Dallas Stars from across the league. So, as we asked Ryan before, we'll ask you, and we'll ask our next guest, whoever that is on Monday. When you look at the Stars from afar in the 25-26 season, what sticks out to you, and where they kind of fit in the league landscape?
Simply, they're one of the 5 or 6 teams that I feel very strongly can win the Stanley Cup going into puck drop, right? That list could be a little longer than 5 or 6, but they're definitely, the teams that you'd feel really, really confident in, right? The Florida Panthers, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Edmonton Oilers, maybe that's the top tier. And then right after that, it's the Stars, the Avs, the Lightning, right? Like these are teams that you have no doubt will be right there come April, a team that you're banking on making a deep run. They are deep at every position. I love their forwards. You only get better when you add Mikko Rantanen, obviously, but on defense, right? You already had one of the best defensemen in the NHL in Miro Heiskanen, and here pops up another one in Thomas Harley. You love the supporting cast when you have guys like Lindell. You love where you're at in goal with Jake Ottinger. It's a team that is going to at some point obviously have to get there, right? And you never want to be the team that was always in it and never found a way to break through. But I do believe the age of the core players on this team, they're a team that can see more internal improvement. Guys like Harley and Wyatt Johnston, nothing says those guys don't have another step in their games this season, right? So I look at them as an inner circle contender in this league. The only reason they're behind some of the other teams is they haven't gotten over the hump. And I guess you could say the Oilers haven't technically either, but they've gotten as close as one can to getting over the hump. But they're right there. And I certainly every year feel that the Stars for the past 2 or 3 are right there with the best teams in the NHL.
Hey, Max, if you could pluck a player off the Stars roster currently and add it to the Wings, Who would it be and why?
That's a great question. Probably Wyatt Johnston, because I just think that a young center who, with his profile, you can trust in hard situations is just the most valuable commodity you can have. But, Harley's making a push for exactly that too, right? I mean, at that position, a big body, mobile left defenseman going to be on Team Canada for the Olympics, in my opinion. It'd be one of the, Miro's obviously every team in the league would be dying to add Miro Heiskanen. So there's a lot of them. Jake Ottinger. I mean, how can you go wrong with one of the 5 or 6 best goalies in the league? But I'll stick down the middle and say Wyatt Johnston. I just think his future is so bright.
Hey, Lud, did you notice that Max's camera quality got the most picture sharp when he started talking about Wyatt?
Listen. We got home at 4 a.m. Everything is blurry here. I have no idea.
I love it. Well, Max, unfortunately, we are out of time, but it's been an absolute pleasure. Really great stuff. I knew it would be, but over and above. And Sean says a lot about you and Ryan, and you guys didn't disappoint. So thank you for carving out some time for us today. Yeah, it was great to talk to you, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Yeah, we'll do it after Sean and I take care of business next Wednesday. We'll have a trophy in the background.
There you go. He'll probably show it on the show too. All right, that's Max Bultman. He is the Detroit Red Wings beat writer for The Athletic. Luds, if everything goes right, aside from your inability to focus your eyesight at the moment, this should be your last show from Wisconsin for a little while and headed back into what we like to call the oven here in DFW.
Yeah, I'll be back in that broom closet right next to you.
Yeah, with the fan running and Sam falling out of a broken chair, and we're ready to roll, aren't we? Sean,
Sam will just keep broken.
That's probably true. Sean, just to wrap it up for this week, because you cover both Detroit and Dallas, I know that, and we've done a lot of stuff where we talk about that we think that there are holes in Dallas's lineup, that they didn't necessarily get better from the playoffs till now through the offseason because of the salary cap. But one thing, and Luds, I think, is rightfully critical of some of the takes of, the Stars are right there, because he feels that there's maybe some things that need to be corrected during this season. But then you ask, guys that cover the Red Wings or, some of the other teams that have really struggled to be anywhere close. And it seems like most of the teams would kill to be in Dallas' situation.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of one of the things of there's a higher standard in Dallas, frankly, than there is in most of the league, right? Like Max talked about those groups of 4 or 5 teams, and Dallas being probably on the Dallas and Colorado being right below that group, probably. We talked about the Floridas, the Edmontons. I think it's all about perception and standard, right? Like you've got teams where if we talked all about Detroit in the show, Detroit makes the playoffs, it's going to be a success, right? Like no matter that it took 9 years, there's going to be a celebration that they're back in the playoffs. It's going to be a success. The Stars could win 2 rounds. The Stars could win 2 rounds, and this season could be a failure. And I think it goes back to all of that, where the Stars are at a higher standard for what they've done, and we can't undersell how bold of a decision they made to fire a coach that went 3 straight Western Conference Finals. When you make that decision to fire a coach who took that far, and your reasoning for it was he was not the guy who was to get us over the Stanley Cup, that means you're saying we have everything else we need, we just have to change the coach. They're at such a higher standard that, and I don't know, like to Lud's, like I agree with Lud's. I think the Stars are a top 8 or 9 team in the league. I think that's an easy thing. Do I put them as a top 4 or 5 team in the league? There's a lot of things I need to see happen for that. So when the standard is Final Four, I don't know if they're Final Four team, and that's kind of where the optics become difficult, because there's a lot of teams that would kill to be in the Stars spot, but a lot of those teams also probably aren't thinking about, hey, I'm dealing with having 3 straight years of failure in the Western Conference Final.
And Luds, we have Mark Spector from the Edmonton beat up Sportsnet coming on Monday to talk about the Oilers. And unlike some of these other teams that are, desperate to be a team that can get into the playoffs or into the second or third round, it'll be really fascinating to get his take on where the Stars are at from his perspective of a team that's been within a win of winning a Stanley Cup. And, the crazy idea of, and we'll talk to Mark on Monday about the Oilers, if they don't win the Stanley Cup in 2026, that's probably a failed season, and that's crazy.
Well, anytime you have arguably the top 2 players, right, on a team and the guy on the planet, expectations are high. And, and again, they obviously saw some things in getting back to the finals again that they didn't necessarily think was going to get them there next year, so they made some changes, and everybody, we're talking about, we're sitting here and we're going, and everybody comes on and Dallas is, top 4, top 5 team. We're not missing a 3rd line or 4th line left winger. We're missing a top, you know what I'm saying? There's a hole there. So, that, and then we've got a couple of defensemen and they're younger, and, we're going to see where their growth goes and everything else. So, we see it every day. And, but yeah, every person you've had on here is throwing flowers at the Stars.
And so that shows that we have, as Sean said, very high expectations and standards for this team, and we will not be dropping those standards as we get close to the start of training camp, which is less than a month away. Luds, Sean, I'll let you guys both go. Thank you very much. We'll see Luds in studio on Monday, and Sean will figure out your schedule for next week as we keep rolling along here on DLS. Thank you to Ryan and to Max for coming on the show, and Kat for producing. I'm Owen. We'll see you next Monday.
We all silly like the mayor.